There once was a man from Kiev, whose presence all did dread. But then he changed, and now his name is known for charitable fame. Sorry for little rhyme poem thing, just came to me for today's episode. So I figured let's roll with it, because it really fits. Howdy all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history and learn about what they did and how we came to recognize them as saints today. Today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Vladimir of Kiev, a brutal pagan turned benevolent Christian. Vladimir was born in Rus in 956, and his grandmother is actually a saint as well, Saint Olga. He was born out of an affair between his father, Sviatoslav, the Grand Duke of Kiev, and Milusha, his mistress. According to some records, Milusha was a prophetess who lived in a cave, could predict the future, and lived to be 100 years old. When Vladimir was old enough, his father gave him Novgorod to look after, but his half-brothers Yaropolk and Oleg started a fight about who got to take over after their father died in 972. They'd each been given a region to rule, but they wanted the power that their father had, like power over everything, not just their own little region, so they kind of fought about that to sort it out. Yaropolk killed Oleg, and wanted to take Novgorod back too, so that he'd be the sole ruler of Rus. So Vladimir fled to Scandinavia in 977, but he didn't take that forced departure lightly. He built up an army and returned in 978 to take his kingdom back, and then he defeated Yaropolk at Rodno and became the sole ruler of Rus in 980. But this isn't a really pretty story, to be honest. Vladimir wasn't the type of saint who was devout his whole life. I already said he was a pretty brutal pagan, actually. He was very well known throughout the region and all the regions around to be very brutal, barbaric, and immoral. And I guess you could argue that he was devout, but as a pagan, and it wasn't really in the best way. He expanded his nation, seizing parts of Poland in 981, stopping a rebellion in 982, so he kept hold of that land, conquering the Yarvingians in 983, then the Radomics in 984, and then in 985, he attacked the Volga Bulgars and took all of that. He was very focused on expanding his territories and didn't really let much stand in his way. Throughout all of this, he held on firmly to his pagan beliefs, and it is said that he had over 800 concubines and erected statues to pagan gods everywhere he went. The land was just littered with all of those statues. After one conquest, he erected a statue to a pagan god, and the people were celebrating the new statue. The group then killed a man named Fyodor and his son Ian, just for being Christian as part of their celebrations, and those two are now considered the first Christian martyrs of Rus. And a lot of people believe that it was that martyrdom that really resonated with Vladimir and what got his journey in faith underway. And in 987, his journey really kicked off. He would have been about 31 years old at this time, and he had heard of and seen missionaries, but he didn't really believe them. He was just like, yeah, whatever. So he found his own people to gather information of all of the religions of the world, or at least his world. He really only cared about like his country and neighboring countries. He didn't want to go like crazy far out. He was just curious to see if what he believed was truly the right one. And when they came back, his people told him that there was one that was truly above the rest. He asked them what it was, and their answer was simply Christianity. In 988, he conquered Kherson and Crimea, knowing that they were among the most devout Christians in the region. He then asked Emperor Basil II for permission to marry his sister, Anna, and Basil was like, all right, but I have conditions. Vladimir needed to actually convert, not just like act like he would, put on a show like, oh yeah, I'm doing it, look at this. He had to actually convert and had to help spread his faith to his people, or his newfound faith. He converted, and he was baptized at Kherson and took the Christian name Basil, kind of in honor of his now brother-in-law. And before the wedding, his eye had started bothering him. He got some sort of sickness, infection, something was going on. But immediately after the baptism, his eye was totally healed, like back to normal, like nothing was wrong with it at all. He invited Greek missionaries when he returned to his land, and he led his people to adopt Christianity. He built schools and churches for his people, and I do have to add that there are some Arabian sources that say the timing for this marriage and this conversion was actually driven for a different reason, and there's multiple sources that reference this, and it could be right, but it doesn't diminish what he did. They just say that this marriage and conversion was necessitated because Basil was being threatened by an uprising, and he wanted Vlad's help, so he asked him, and that's how the marriage started. But in any case, Vladimir adopted Christianity because he realized that it was the only true way to get to heaven. You had to get to know God through Christianity, and that was the ultimate goal. When he got back to Rus, he also destroyed every pagan monument that he had previously ordered to be constructed, and instead, he had churches built in their place. He started with the Church of St. Basil and then the Church of Tithes. He also baptized some of his sons around this time too. So, remember that brutal conqueror who just wanted more land to rule over? Well, you probably wouldn't recognize him after his conversion. Now, he did still fight other nations, but not in the same capacity as before. It was more of a defense necessity, not a conquer, I want to rule more people. What was more important to him now was to serve his people. He personally gave out food and drink to those in need. He would go out and seek out those who didn't have the means to seek him out. He was very active and very benevolent to his people. He wanted to share others' burdens and to love his neighbor no matter what. He built numerous schools for his people, and he changed the laws that had been governing the land for a while. He abolished capital punishment and judicial torture and mutilation, and because of his schools and education increase, literacy became a lot more common in Rus and gave rise to its first literature works. An interesting note is that some historians theorize that the people of his region were already kind of considering Christianity, but they were too scared to openly say, hey, we believe this, because they just adopted it so readily. It just was kind of like suspicious to some. But at the same time, if your ruler had been known for being super brutal before, you might be kind of scared to be like, we're not going to go with your new religion. We're going to stick with this one you used to believe, because they were probably thinking, if I don't agree with him, he's going to beat me up, which may have been true of the old Vladimir, but not then current Vladimir. Now, remember I mentioned some of his sons were baptized. Not all of them, though. Some of his sons from previous marriages refused baptism, and they got kind of mad and started their own uprisings. In 1014, Vladimir was marching to protect his people from one of his sons, Yaroslav, in Novgorod. He had given the region to his son just as his father had done for him. But that was before his conversion. Yaroslav wanted nothing to do with his father by that point and openly refused him as ruler of all of Rus. He felt that Christianity was like a weakness and you had to be pagan. And obviously, Vladimir wasn't going to stand for that. But along the way, Vladimir got sick and passed away in Berezovsk, Russia. His feast day is July 15th, and he is the patron saint of Russian Catholics and of Kiev. Now, I had some difficulty finding a beatification and canonization date. I did find one source that said he was canonized in 1240, but that's because the Orthodox Catholic Church handled canonizations differently, and they still do actually to this day, at least different from the Roman Catholic Church. So he was known as a saint in the Orthodox Church and kind of adopted as one by the Roman Catholic Church, and there are a lot of older saints that are common between the different denominations. In modern day, each has their own process, so it's not exactly mirrored, but if you go far enough back, you'll realize that it's all pretty much identical. So maybe you could argue that he went through equivalent canonization just because people are like, he's definitely a saint after he died, and then it wasn't made official for about 2 centuries after his death. But he did also have a healing miracle, his eye at baptism, and a lot of the records suggest that such a drastic shift in faith and a swift adoption and embracement of it is a miracle in and of itself. He had been so ruthless. To imagine that he could convert and be so kind was really kind of beyond people's comprehension for his reputation at the time. He was called to become a Christian. He felt something telling him that he had to do that.
Right. He just felt it.
And thank you to my lovely wife for confirming that. And that's Vlad's story pretty much. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. So what do you think of Saint Vladimir of Kiev? What are your thoughts about his drastic conversion? I hope you found his story interesting, and I look forward to learning your thoughts on Saint Vladimir. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. I upload once a week, every Thursday. Take care, and have a wonderful day.